FPL double game week 32 is here, and in today's video we're going to take a look at my first lineup going into the double. Of course, I have my assistant manager active, but we'll also be answering questions about the triple captain, the bench boost, and general chip strategy and players to buy in this video as well. We'll be talking about captaincy, whether we should be looking outside of Alexander Isak if he is a doubt after the Leicester game on Monday night. What is up, everyone? FPL Harry here. Before we dive in, 2,000 likes is the aim. Subscribe if you're new around here as well. And let's have a look at the double in game week 32. So I'm recording just as Phil Foden has gone off after 56 minutes against Manchester United and returned me just 1 point. The rank on screen is TBC because, of course, there is the game to go on Monday night where I have Isak not captain because, unfortunately, I captained Salah, who was anonymous today again, and we'll talk about him later on in the video. I've still got Jacob Murphy and I've got the assistant manager on Eddie Howe, but I don't have any Newcastle defence and I don't have Isak as captain. I think after the Manchester City game, I'm on a small red arrow, so I'd be lucky if it turns green. Now, Eddie Howe could do well, but with the amount of Newcastle ownership there is generally a lot that could hurt me in that game as well. So just taking a look at how my team is lining up for game week 32 at the moment. I'm currently captaining Isak. Let's see how he gets on Monday, but I still think he's the best captain for Manchester United at home and Crystal Palace at home. Of course, a reminder that it is a double for Newcastle against those two teams, and of course it is a double for Crystal Palace at home to Newcastle and then away to Manchester City as well. So that's where we're falling with the double. I've got 3 from Crystal Palace and 2 from Newcastle at the moment. I'm pretty certain that I'm going to roll my transfer, even if something was to happen on Monday night. If Isak got really badly injured, for example, maybe I would move him to Callum Wilson, or if Murphy got really badly injured, then I would have to deal with that. But outside of those two, I don't plan on making a transfer this week. It's more about deciding on my benching decisions. Now, Phil Foden's early sub against Manchester United and his benching against Leicester means that he is probably the most likely of my midfielders and attackers to get benched. It is between Phil Foden and Bukayo Saka. They continue to look to build up Saka's minutes. Let's see how many he gets against Real Madrid on Tuesday. They do have quite a good turnaround. It's Tuesday, Wednesday in the Champions League, which is slightly better. At the moment, I'm benching Konza of Aston Villa away at Southampton, and he's actually third on my bench. Now, he didn't start against Aston Villa. I think he probably does start against Southampton, but it doesn't mean that I don't think Aston Villa will rotate because, of course, that fixture comes right in between the 2 Champions League quarterfinals against PSG. And let's be real, I think Aston Villa can rotate and still beat that Southampton side. Now, it is still an important game, but I do think Konza is probably one that will drop to the bench. This is the issue with planning to bench boost later on, is that I have to have a really strong bench every week. The only real decision I feel like I've got is, do I double up on the Nottingham Forest defence with Milenkovic and Williams, Milenkovic who I bought this week, or do I bench Gvardiol? Now, at the moment, because I've got triple Crystal Palace are looking pretty good at the moment, and I don't think City look that great defensively. They're on a clean sheet at the moment, but we'll see if they hold on to that against Manchester United. I do think Crystal Palace probably score in that game, so I have favoured going with the double up on the Nottingham Forest defence at home to Everton, which is a really good fixture. So I'm pretty happy with how my lineup is at the moment. If there's an injury to a Newcastle player on Monday night, I'd have to reconsider, but the Palace players look like they've come through unscathed. I can't do Sarr to Eze. It does look like Eze is probably a better buy than Sarr at the moment, but I can't make that sideways switch. I don't have the money, and it would be a -4 to go and do it, so I'm not going to do that. In theory, I could sell Foden and then free up money to do Sarr to Eze, but that would be a -4, and I just don't really think it's worthwhile. The plan is to keep the assistant manager on Eddie Howe this week, roll the transfer. The captaincy is on Isak. There's not too much to talk about with my team apart from maybe my benching decisions, but after the Foden early sub with the Aston Villa rotation, I think that's ruled out quite a lot. It's just if I go Gvardiol over one of my Nottingham Forest defenders. So with the idea of keeping this video as useful as possible, despite me planning to roll my transfer, we're going to answer 6 of the key questions this week. The first one is, would I triple captain Isak if I still have it? So the first thing to mention here is they've probably got 3 opportunities left to play your triple captain. Game week 32, game week 33, and there is a potential double in game week 36, but that is not confirmed and it's not definite that it's going to happen either. Personally, I would rather play it on Isak in game week 32 than save it towards the end of the season in game week 36. Now, if you don't have the bench boost, you could look at playing it in game week 33. You could play it on someone like Saka if you think he's going to get the minutes. You could play it on Omar Marmoush for his double as well. I do think that Alexander Isak is probably the best double left with 2 home fixtures against Manchester United and Crystal Palace. Now, if we get to Monday night and Isak is a doubt, let's say he doesn't start or he's not in the squad at all, which I don't think is going to happen, but let's say we get that, then maybe you need to reconsider. Now, 33, there is Saka and Marmoush. Outside of that, you could look at Aston Villa, but their double's pretty difficult. You could triple captain on Mateta in game week 32, but I don't love the double for them. Or you could save it later on until game week 36. Personally, if Isak was a doubt going into the double in game week 32, in that situation, I would then save it or play it in game week 33. But if Isak is available, I do think I'd probably play it. Now, some of you has also asked whether I would bench boost 32, triple captain 33, or triple captain 32, bench boost 33. Which way round would I look to do it? Now, this is, of course, team dependent, right? If your bench looks really good in game week 32, then yes, you can play your bench boost. But if you've gone with like an Areola, for example, who plays Liverpool away this week, then it's much better to bench boost in game week 33. So you probably thought about it when you played your wild card about which week it fits better. So have a look about which week your bench boost fits better, and then probably just look to play the triple captain in the other week. The other thing to mention is bench boost game week 32 will probably save you some transfers, because in game week 33, if you bench boost, you'll probably need at least 2 or 3 transfers to take out triple Newcastle, who go away to Aston Villa in game week 33. So if you're looking at your bench in game week 32 and you're thinking, I could bench boost this week, I actually would really consider it, because it's maybe losing one fixture compared to game week 33, because none of us are really bench boosting in game week 33, or none of you are, because I'm not, with any real doubles on the bench. So if it looks good in game week 32, it'll probably save you transfers in game week 33, so you don't have to ship out all of your Newcastle players rather than committing 3 free transfers. Generally, I think triple captain 32, bench boost 33 is better if you've planned for it. But if it's fallen well in game week 32, I would consider playing the bench boost this week and save some transfers for next week. And that will also be a little bit differential, because most people are setting up for triple captain Isak and bench boost the other way around. It could go really well that bench boost works this week and someone hits the triple captain really well next week. So again, if you're looking for a differential strategy, it could be worth considering swapping them. And then one of the most asked questions this week is, what should you do with Mo Salah? I think that is 7 games on the bounce in all competitions outside of internationals without an open play goal. He did score 2 penalties against Southampton. I personally don't think I will be selling. West Ham at home, Leicester away. The end of the season is still okay as well. There's not really anyone obvious that I would look to be spending the money on as well. Now, some of you have asked, should you sell Salah, or should you sell, for example, and go and buy a Rashford or buy a Morgan Rogers for their Southampton fixture? I still think I would be holding on for Mo Salah for West Ham at home and Leicester away in the next 2 weeks. At time recording, the Manchester United, just another timestamp, is the Manchester derby is up to 75 minutes, still without a goal. Will there be a winner in that fixture? We'll have to wait and see. Next up is a few more questions. Again, just try and cover everything, because my team is quite straightforward and a little bit boring this week. First of all, is best Aston Villa players. The first thing I would say is I'd be really cautious buying Aston Villa players this week. They have PSG in either side of that Southampton fixture, and we saw them rotate against Nottingham Forest, obviously showing how important the Champions League is. And if they're going to rotate heavily against Forest, where they made 8 changes, there's no reason to suspect that they won't make more changes against Southampton next week. I wouldn't be going and buying Ollie Watkins. I wouldn't be buying Rashford. I wouldn't be buying Asensio. Morgan Rogers does look like the one who seems to be playing an incredible amount of minutes and feels a little bit indestructible, but it's also not completely without risk that he could maybe not play that Southampton game. If you've got a Phil Foden, for example, or a Savinho, and you want to move off them, I still think I'd probably give them the Crystal Palace game, especially because Manchester City are the early kickoff, and we often get a little bit of Manchester City news on Twitter and stuff like that. So we might get that little benefit to the likes of Foden or Savinho. I would just be really cautious buying Aston Villa players this week. We saw Ezri Konsa, who looked nailed. We saw him drop out. We saw Luka Dean drop out. Martinez and Rogers look like the most safe in terms of minutes, but I really don't think I'd be buying them this week, because I think there's a crazy high risk of rotation. Next up is what to do with your assistant manager this week. So generally, I think that Eddie Howe or Glasner are the best options. If you went Eddie Howe, it's best to keep it on him. If you're looking to go Glasner, probably is the better bet out of the 2 this week, with a couple of table bonus games, as long as Newcastle don't lose to Leicester on Monday night. Outside of that, if you've got triple Newcastle, triple Crystal Palace, it's really difficult to see there being any really good table bonus games. You're probably, if you don't want to play it on that, you're either playing it on Arteta or Pep, because that's what you're going to have it on in game week 33, or Unai Emery, for example, or you're punting on someone like Arne Slot. But generally, I think that Howe or Glasner are the best 2. again, it kind of depends what your team looks like. If you've got a spare Newcastle slot or a spare Palace slot, then you should just do that. I wouldn't be making too many changes. Howe is obviously safer with Manchester United at home and Palace at home. But of course, Glasner will probably have two table bonus games and Howe will have the much higher upside. Also, if you go Glasner, you can keep it on him in game week 33. Whereas if you go Eddie Howe, you're probably going to look to move it. So it will kind of depend on who you went on this week. You probably would have had a thought about that. I probably prefer if you have the option to go Glasner for the next two, then that probably works. But if you have a spare Newcastle slot, then Eddie Howe, or you can have a look at Unai Emery or Pep Guardiola or Arteta, because if that's who you might want it on in game week 33 as well. And finally, it's just to look at those two teams with a double and rank the Palace and Newcastle players. So starting off at Crystal Palace, Mateta 1, Eze 2, Munoz, Sarr, and then it's Henderson. I don't think I'd be using a transfer to go Sarr to Eze, but if you've got luxury transfers and you've got nothing else to do, then maybe you could make the swap. And then having a look at Newcastle. So I don't know the Newcastle lineup at the moment. I don't know if Gordon and Trippier are available. Isak is definitely number one. Gordon, if available, is number two. Then Murphy. Then you're probably looking at the defenders. Trippier is best if you have the money and he's available, but I don't think he's good value at the moment. And then it is Burn, and then it is Livramento again. There's very little to pick between the two cheaper ones. And of course, if you've already picked one, it's not worth switching between them. So just going back to my team, not to drag it out too much. I plan on rolling my transfer this week with the Foden early sub. I'm really concerned about his minutes going into this game. I might just have to keep him for the double and hope he plays one out of the two. In theory, I could sell him when the double rolls around and go to a Mikel Merino. I could go to a Morgan Rogers from Phil Foden if I'm really concerned. And that, in theory, would open up the potential to play the assistant manager on Pep instead of playing on Arteta. So that is one that I can discuss and think about once we get to game week 33. But at the moment, the plan is to bench Foden. I'm worried about Aston Villa rotation, so Konsa's on the bench. And then it is really just Gvardiol against Milenkovic or Williams. I'm not going to bench any of my double game week players, and I'm definitely going to captain a player with a double. At the moment, it's on Isak, but it could fall to Mateta if Alexander Isak looks like he's a bit of a doubt. Assistant manager's on Eddie Howe, and I plan on keeping it on him as well, of course, for his double with Manchester United and Palace. That was always the plan. So, of course, a lot to go on Monday night. Let's hope that Murphy scores, and let's hope, for me, that Alexander Isak is on the bench. But I do expect that he'll get some returns because that Leicester side look all over the place. And let's hope that Eddie Howe can grab me a green arrow because it's looking quite slim chances at the moment. I know some of you are wildcarding this week, so we will have a wildcard draft later on in the week. It might just be a short video. I don't know how much time I have this week, but I will get something out for you on wildcard this week. Let me know if you have any questions. Of course, we'll have the usual transfer targets, complete guide, team selection later out on this week. So drop any early questions you have that aren't answered in this video. We have spent lots of time answering questions though, but if you drop them in the comments, if I don't answer them straight away, I'll make sure to include the answers in hopefully some of the videos later on this week as well. Thank you all so much for watching. 2,000 likes is the aim. Subscribe if you are new around here, and I'll be back again very soon.